So I think Spicky is going to lead us off first on his first topic. Um, yeah, take it away, Spicky. I'll just have the chat up here on the side if other people want to have the chat up. If this starts getting bigger, I'll type in kind of like names of people for questions and whatnot for a list. But otherwise, all same stuff. So yeah, take it away,
Cool.
Spicky.
Cool. Welcome everybody. How are you doing? Awesome. Good deal. The way that I want to set this up, and I haven't done a Zoom presentation before. So anybody who has, let me know if I'm going down the wrong road. What I'm hoping to do is let everybody kind of make comments as they feel they need to or they can. I would prefer this to be more of a discussion than a presentation, so to speak. So I'm just going to kind of throw out some ideas and some concepts and just kind of create what do I say, a mindfulness of these ideas and just see how you guys are associating to them. Does that sound cool to everybody? Awesome. Cool. Well, let me go ahead and try this right here. I'm going to try to get my keynote to come up. Okay. Okay. Can everybody see that? Okay, cool. All right. So the way that I'd like to break into this is just, these are two different words, urgency versus despair. And I just kind of want to get a little feedback from you guys as far as like when you think of those words, do you think of any kind of differences? Can you compare? Can you contrast? I mean, go ahead and let me know what you're thinking when you think of these words.
I would say despair is, connected to self-doubt, lack of self-confidence, a sense of imminent failure. And urgency is more just that need to focus, to get things done, or to prioritize, to move, to be aggressive. I mean, that's just what naturally comes to mind.
Cool. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd say it kind of like, to me, I just think of like emergency a little bit when it's like urgency, like, oh my God, I got to do this right now. Like, and despair is like more like the result thereafter, like, was like, not feeling good about it. Like, wasn't super stoked on it.
So like a personal despair, like you didn't perform the way that you wanted to.
Yeah.
Okay. And Chris, when you were talking about despair before, you were talking about like, what was it? Self-doubt.
Yeah. Lack of confidence, self-doubt. And just
Okay.
you believe you're going to fail, you
Yep.
believe nothing's going to work. It's despair.
Totally. Cool. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was thinking that despair, like you've had that experience before where you know kind of what you're going to do and there's nothing you can do to change it. And that urgency is, I don't know, kind of similar to what you guys have said, is that like immediate needed input, something is like needed right then.
Cool. Awesome. How many people are with us right now?
There's 12.
12.
You.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to move on unless anybody else has anything to add. Some great stuff, actually. You guys actually pegged my entire presentation, so I think we're all set. Thanks for coming. Have a great night. Totally joking. What we're going to do is I'll go ahead and tell you guys what kind of piqued my interest with this concept was this book here, Deep Survival. Lawrence Gonzalez, he refers to a much larger spectrum of accommodating urgency or giving up to despair. So basically what he did is he did a ton of research. Has anybody read this book? Awesome, Dana. What'd you think of it?
Entertaining. The author has a lot of good points, and a lot of it is he did a lot of research is what I gained from this. So I took away just tons of facts from it.
Cool. Did you start to kind of get into, like, he talks a lot about how the brain works within those different situations. Did you take away some of that too?
Yes. And a lot of it, I think the biggest takeaway is that a lot of this is a choice, whether we prioritize something as urgent or we choose to fall into despair, we have a lot of personal responsibility when it comes to that. There's certain things in our life that we can control. There's certain things that we can't, but we can choose how we react to them. And a lot of that can really shape the outcome of where things go from there.
Cool. So, so basically your headspace with how you kind of accommodate that and deal with that, what do I say, damage control, so to speak. So basically kind of what he gets into, he speaks to, for those of you that haven't read it, he goes into all this research with, he talks to all the fire jumpers, police, fighter pilots, mountaineers, divers, all these people that are put into a situation of do or die in the face of urgency. And they basically have the wherewithal to perform under pressure. And so that's really kind of what his book about. And like I was saying, it's a really wide spectrum. I mean, he talks about, basically who lives, who dies, and why they do that. And so basically what he does is he starts to break down like the decision-making process. And so these are long things. So this can be like this can be a plane going down in the forest and there's one survivor, and basically all the steps that they go through. And if they survived, what choice did they make and when did they make that choice, like Dana was talking about, to basically survive, okay? And so it's whether or not they're rising to a certain level of urgency or if they're kind of folding to despair, okay? So this I thought was one of my favorite quotes from the book, and it's basically, we have access to this cognition that Joseph is talking about here. When we are comfortable and confident, it makes it easier to shift from reaction to action. And any of you brainiac nerds out there with me, basically what that is being able to shift from the limbic system. And that's a reaction that is based off of previous experiences to working in the prefrontal cortex, which is dealing with what's in front of our face. And so the book is amazing as far as how he kind of illustrates this shift of going from one place to the other and then back. And he goes through multiple different situations. So anyways, kind of, I've kind of utilized this with comfort, confidence, and commitment. And then what I've done with that is basically taken that comfort, confidence, and commitment into an internal gauge, okay? And so I have a traffic light in my head, red, yellow, and green. And so this traffic light in my head is specific to me and my experiences and basically what I'm afraid of, what I'm not, what I've been successful with in the past, what I haven't, and all those kinds of things. So I'll just go through this real quick. Green, planets are in alignment. Everything's rocking. Everything is great. You feel awesome. The snow feels awesome underfoot. I use the word poised here, and I think I might have mentioned this in the last tech talk that we were in. A trainer shared with me this concept of being poised versus posed. And basically when you're comfortable, kind of the concept that he came down to is like when you're poised, you can jump in the air at any point in time. When you're posed, you can't do that. So you're kind of locked into a position. And so this poised means being able to move from one position to another as opposed to posed. And then obviously this kind of goes into flow state, which I think was a presentation that I missed in one of the earlier tech talks. And then, Tony, this is why it says ? Tony, what do you think with drive? I mean, do you think that, as far as what you understand of my traffic light right now, do you think that this would kind of cross over or associate to what you basically refer to as drive?
Yeah, I think so. I guess it just depends on how much you drive it and how much you let it go, but yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. And basically what we have is we have an approach response to this situation for one reason or another. Okay. And we'll go into this next one here. Oh, let me go back. Actually, what I wanted to do is I wanted to stop it before this, but, and I wanted to ask you guys what makes the green. So obviously I've got some points up here, but does anybody have any other points of what makes it green for you to be in the flow state? What makes things like, all the planets are in alignment? What constitutes that for you? Or what constitutes that for like what you've seen with your students?
I feel like my physical body and my mental body, as well as like my emotional body, is all like in alignment and like just ready to go.
Cool.
Kind of to the being cool one, it's the challenge is meeting my physical capabilities at the time. So I'm able to do the things, but it's also, pushing myself a little bit, but it's not anything outside my comfort zone.
Nice. And that's great, because I'm glad that you picked that out, because later on when we get to the red, there's actually a term in there called hot cognitions. And that's the opposite of that being cool. But thanks for picking up on that being cool, because that is kind of what it takes to, accommodate a sense of urgency. Cool. Anyone else? Kind of what I wanted to get to here is the bottom one. Oh yeah. So this is kind of an idea that I've been working with my students and in training. And, those of you that know me, that have done clinics with me before, know I can get really heavy on the, the neurological side of things. But I've broken it down to where it's super simple, to whether the brain is actually saying like, oh yeah, like I'm stoked about doing this, or it starts to go into the opposite of, which is, oh no, which we'll eventually get to. But so for now, I'm kind of putting that sense of urgency and accommodating that, and being able to do that with an oh yeah kind of feeling. Okay. So yellow, we start to be apprehensive. Maybe we aren't feeling completely comfortable with what's happening. There's something that's changing. The possibility of drive decreasing. What do you guys think would start to make a light turn yellow in your head?
For me, it's like getting a little bit gripped about something. It's like whether that's the terrain or the task or the environment, situation, social things, whatever, just like Parker factor going up just a little bit.
Cool. I like that you brought up the social part. I really didn't obviously that's kind of where the SCARF model can come into play with this kind of thing, as approach or avoid, but that's great to pull that up. I kind of stuck with the physical side of things, but thanks for bringing that up for sure. Anyone else with the yellow?
Yeah, I think Mike and I just witnessed it today, riding that little jib. We're playing with front boards and stuff. And the first couple times, both of us were a little spooked on it. And I think, and then seeing like going back and being like, oh, last time I went front board on like a down feature, urban down feature, like I spanked myself or whatever. And then kind of building it up, you were having some success and kind of easing your way into it. So I think it's like you can look into like past experiences, and that could make you more gripped as well.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Anyone else?
Weather
for sure.
like visibility and like I think somebody else mentioned it, Conrad, it might have been you, kind of like the conditions definitely can change my confidence for sure.
Totally. And I'll go ahead and throw in temperature. I hate to say it, but if I start to get if on those really, really cold days, I'm really super tight, and so I kind of realize I might be a little apprehensive because I'm super tight as well. So thanks for adding that, Claire. Chris?
I was going to say that I'll give you a really vivid example for me in terrain park riding, because I love the park, but there are certain parks that I go to, and there's a vibe that I feel that just makes me pump the brakes a little bit. I mean, Breck can have that vibe for sure. Mammoth can have that vibe. Like Bear definitely has that vibe. It's like it becomes a battle. It's like warfare instead of just relaxing and owning my space. And I just don't have enough time at those parks or know enough of the people to feel confident to fit in. And that's where I start to. That's what gets yellow for me. I'm less successful, and emotionally, mentally, my focus is on something other than what I really want to be doing.
Right on. So would you kind of put that more kind of in the social aspect, as far as like how you feel or how you're socially affected?
Yeah, because I've made jokes about the shape of the jumps. The jumps don't really bother me at, say, like Breck or Mammoth or anything. It's just it's the intensity of the social atmosphere that is just. It's just not what I want, man. It's just I want people to take their turn. Anyway.
Right. No, it can be heavy for sure.
Go ahead, Lynn.
For me, it's uncertainty when I don't feel like I've prepared enough for something.
Good point. Good point. Lack of certainty. And as we know too, when there's a lack of certainty, we don't always make the best decisions, so it's kind of where that game plan comes into play. So super cool. I'll go ahead and pop up here. So why is it yellow? So we had some of these kinds of things pop up as far as like, something feels different, out of sync with the speed, the snow, the consistency of the snow, visual concerns, terrain, and obstacles. I even put in here too, sounds that don't match up start to put me into yellow. So I start to like sit there and think of like, okay, why did that sound just happen? That's not a sound that I normally hear when I do this. So, and it just and it can be a gut feeling too. It can just be a general feeling of concern. Something feels out of place. Okay. And so that's kind of where we start kind of getting like, what do I say? Like, the more experience we have, the more of a gut feeling we have. And that's kind of where that general feeling of concern can come into play. We can't quite put our finger on it. Okay. So we'll go into red here. Obviously we get into blocking defensive movements. This is where we kind of move from that poise to pose that I was talking about before. We start to lose composure, and we start to create an avoid response to whatever we're doing. So who was it talking? Tony, you were talking about you guys doing the board slides on corrugated. And so basically you said you felt a little shaky on it, so would that have, at first, is that kind of an avoid response until you work your way through it?
Yeah, for sure. We were definitely like, you can see like when one of us got comfortable doing it, like the level of commitment to the full hop on versus like, I'll stick my nose up on there real quick and give it a tickle, So yeah, for sure.
Nice. I love the confidence and commitment. So good job. So anyways, so I messed up again here. I was going to ask what things start to make it red. And obviously I put some points up here, but go ahead and feel free to share what makes it red for you and what makes it red for students that you've seen.
So I was talking earlier about how gripped I get. It's when my pucker factor, or the amount that I'm gripped, it's overcoming my ability to process it, like through cognition or through rationalizing. That's starting to overcome my ability.
Okay, cool. Well put.
This is KB here, Spicky. Can you hear me?
Hey KB, how you doing, buddy?
Good, and yourself? Awesome topic.
Great, thanks.
I don't know why this comes to mind when I'm looking at your red, yellow, green, but CAA, the green is kind of like you have your cognitive, social, autonomous. I think about it in that manner but just on how I'm feeling, like when I'm in that autonomous state, that flow state, my body's feeling nice, everything's feeling good. And as I work my way down from a feeling perspective, right, the yellow is I'm so, and then that red for me is like cognitive, like boots don't feel right, the board doesn't feel right, the light doesn't feel right, the snow doesn't feel right. But that's what this kind of has led me to think about, is the CAA model, as I call it, in terms of your red, yellow, green.
Dude, that's awesome. I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to bring that up as well, but I didn't want to go on too much of a tangent. But you're absolutely right, because that associative process is so critical as far as getting to that autonomy. And if we deal with the yellow or the red within that association process, being careful of whether or not we are, going more toward a green yellow, or if we're going more toward a red yellow. So that's a great thing to notice there, KB. Thanks for bringing that up for sure.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Dana.
So I really like the fact that you put in hot cognition, because the way I always think about it is, if I'm in the green, I'm able to make decisions devoid of any emotions. If I'm in the red, my emotions are making the decisions for me. They're like so intertwined in the decision-making process. And it's kind of like, the best analogy I can make is, if you personify fear, imagine you're in the car and fear is sitting next to you. If you're in the green, fear can be talking like, hey, I want to change the channel on the radio. And you're like, no, just relax. But if you're in the red, and fear's like, we got to make a turn right here. You're going to listen to fear, and fear's going to be making fear might even grab the wheel, right? So like, that's just how I think about it. So I'm glad that you put in the hot cognition versus like cold cognition.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks. It's, and this is really what it comes down to is our ability to, because we start working into almost a sense of disparity when we start listening to that fear in the seat next to us. And so that's where we start going down that road. And then we start operating in the limbic system. We're dealing with, we're basically dealing with previous experiences at that point, as opposed to what's in front of our face. And that goes back to that original quote, being able to go from reactive to proactive kind of thing. So great point there. And, basically, I've got all the things listed here. Amygdala hijack, that gets into an aspect of where we start to get so that we basically, like you said, we start to go purely down that emotional road, and we're making decisions based off of the past for survival. And so that's why we work into that oh no state of mind right there. So here we have a toxic combination of threats. And so this is the despair, and this is what happens in the brain. So once we start to go from that yellow to that red, we start to lose that cognitive function that Conrad was talking about. It literally makes us dumber. I actually stole this slide from the SCARF model. And then obviously we're tickling the amygdala, part of your threat detection system. And then the hijack, that's the point of no return, and it releases stress hormones. And then, hold on. So, and then what I'm going to do is I'll talk about that in the next slide, but basically we end up releasing the amount of stress hormones that are, relative to the amount of perceived threat that we feel. So depending on how much stress hormones are released, depends on how long it takes for us to recover. And so what it comes down to is we, understanding that in ourselves, to be kind to ourselves in that process, and then also with our students. So what I want to do right now is I just want to go through a couple of videos, and I want you guys to throw out where you think that they're at in the spectrum. And, I mentioned green, yellow, and red, but, maybe there's a greenish yellow, maybe there's a, reddish, yellowish red, more of an orange kind of thing. So let me know what you guys think about this and why, with each one of these riders going through. And I'll just hit play and stop as we go through. So. What do you guys think about their, as far as their traffic light?
Can you play it again? It was a little
the playback was
jumpy for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like sketchy playback.
Is that better?
It looks like stop action videos.
Bummer.
Like it's skipping multiple frames.
Oh no. Well, let me see if I can.
It looks like they're shredding through the trees and actually jumping.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did see that correctly.
Yep.
So I'm going to say they're green. They're in there flowing. They're having fun. They're loose. They're relaxed. You can see the ankle movement and the board just shifting. And then the fact that they're both doing jumps at the end in the trees would tell me they're more in that green realm.
I'm going to go.
So I think, go ahead, Conrad. Oh. So I think the first person did a grab off of that little log jib, if you will. And then the second person was a little more off balance, and it didn't quite look as confident, but was I'm going to follow my friends. So I'd say the first person was more green, and then the second person was getting into that red zone a little bit, all right, I'm going to go for it. But I don't know.
And especially after that little
Yeah.
Would you agree, especially after that little hit that he did? Because he got in the back seat. Okay, cool. Conrad?
Yeah, I would say I agree there with Corey, but for the reason why is that the person who was following had a wider landing zone. So they gave themselves a bigger margin of error, having that jump that was a little further up the trail. That person who jumped first jumped a little further down, so they had to make an immediate turn before the trees. So they had to have a little bit more control of their body movements.
Cool. Good observation.
Hey, Spicky, something that I wonder is is it possible that we're making these decisions or assumptions on their body language and their intent versus what they actually do. Like they're both intending to KB's point, they're both intending to shred through the trees and hit the jump. Now the first person doesn't know what the jump is like, right? But the second person knows that the jump is solid because his homie just hit it in front of him.
Yep.
But the thing that we all of us don't know is we don't know how sketchy those riders are normally. So maybe that's them riding their best and they're just sketchy riders, right? You know what I'm saying? So even though they might look fearful because they're sketchy and they're flailing a little bit, or maybe they're really good riders and they are fearful and they are sketching. Like, so it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm just taking that into consideration when you ask that question. Like,
Well, so let me go ahead and throw this out there really quick. So we've all had the, what I want to say, very, very timid person that's learning how to snowboard. And we've also had the 13-year-old teenager. And I'm going to go ahead and say 13-year-old boy, because there normally is no fear, so their perception of a threat is way different than like a 60-year-old lady. And I'm sorry to kind of sex or age discrimination wise, but I am profiling right now, but as an average within those areas. So those are things that we start to see. So when I see like some kid that, can't even make turns and he's like, I want to hit that jump over there. And it's like, you try to explain to them, they can't even stand up. But meanwhile, they're going for it, and you don't see any red. You don't see any blocking or defensive. You just see them going for it, even though they don't have the skills to do it. So I think what you're saying has merit, because that does come into play as far as like where their headspace is. Okay. And so where basically how much they are willing to give to learn what they're doing,
Yeah, and to that point, it's like they're not smart enough to have fear. Like they don't know, you know what I mean? Maybe that 13-year-old kid who's like a beginner, but yet he's super gutsy, hasn't had enough experience to really spank himself and catch a log in the trees. So he doesn't know the danger that he's facing. So he's just like, I'm going to send it. And, that's the person that you try to save from themselves. You're like, whoa, homie. Let's just look at this for a second. You know what I mean?
But Tony, I would actually disagree with that to a certain extent. I think Spicky said earlier when we got into the red, we're kind of reliving our past experiences, maybe past failures, etc. I think at some point with our skill level and as we continue to climb the ladder, that experience can also hinder us versus like, you know what, I got the skills to do it, I'm going to try it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with the experience hurting us. But I think ideally, like, if you're too low on the scale where you don't have enough experiences to know any better, then you have no fear. So sometimes it's easier to teach that. Or if you're too high on that experience and you've had too many bad experiences, then yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you're spot on.
In those videos, though, I think you can assume that those guys have some experience. They're riding the trees in powder. So it's hard, though, for us as a group to not immediately start analyzing their ability like they're in an exam or something. I was going to say, to your point, though, in New Jersey, I taught this rapper and his 30 friends who all came in a big posse, this guy named A Boogie, and they didn't want to learn anything. They literally just wanted me to take them to the top of the magic carpet and let them point it and try to ollie off of all of the bank turns that were there for the beginners. And that's all they did. They didn't care about stopping. They didn't care about turning. They just cared about getting air and crashing, and they thought it was hilarious. So, there is something to be said, to what the point that Tony made. I think in this case, though, you have a couple of riders that were riding, somewhere within their ability level. They're at a reasonably intermediate or above intermediate level, to be in that situation. So.
And Chris, with those guys doing the ollies and, doing the jumps and stuff like that, would you say that they were in a green state of mind, even though they didn't have the skills?
They were totally in a green. They were high. They were high as you could possibly be.
So literally a green state of mind.
They were super green, and until they started breaking their asses. Sorry for my language, but like one of the guys I kept helping up was like, he was 350 and he was a bodyguard, right? And huge. He was like 6'6", 350. And I'm sitting there trying to pull him up with all of my body. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's going to kill me. But that dude slammed so hard so many times, and his friends just kept peer pressuring him to keep going. But he went to red real fast. Like after about the third hit, I would say, first hit, he's willing to try again. He was like, it was like his football days is how he told it to me. And then his second hit, he was not laughing as much. Third hit, he was only continuing on because if he didn't, everybody in that group would have made fun of him. So there was this really wild social dynamic too.
I want to do my best.
Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm just wondering if we could look at somebody and tell if they're in the red or green, or if the only way to truly tell is to have some kind of relationship and to get some communication and for them to tell us. Like Mike and I were talking, like today we're doing like front boards. And like I came off the first front board I tried, I was spooked out, and there was like sweet came out switch. It was awesome. And it was like, oh, somebody was watching from afar, they might be like, dude, that dude's totally in the green. Like he just dialed the front board on that corrugated down pipe, like super easy. But I'm like, no, dude, I was shitting myself. Like, do you know what I mean? So like, unless we know what's going on in this person's head, how do are we kind of making assumptions?
Can I want to add on to that just a little bit. And I would say that, yes, we're making assumptions with people of relative skill. But I will say this, you can watch any rider or any person, and there are certain behaviors that they exhibit when they're terrified. And so I think you could probably identify those, super red, bright red hot behaviors, because they're very obvious, right? Maybe it's rigid, lack of movement. It's, lots of leaning back, like things where they're just highly unstable. And you could argue that maybe that's their best performance, because there are people that ride really bad, but it'd be hard because you can absolutely see someone who's terrified. It's like, if you watch someone going to hit a jump, for example, and you watch them sit back lower and lower towards their tail as they go up the ramp out of fear, that's not green. That is a passive fear reaction, which is why people land on their heads so often, mistakenly on jumps. And there certainly are some things that I think you could identify, but I think you're dead on, Tony. It would be damn hard to identify whether or not they're red or green without knowing context of who they are, where they come from, and why they're operating, how they're operating.
And so with that, on this next clip, we're actually going to see some movements here that we don't necessarily, promote as efficient movements, but with intent. Okay, so that I think that kind of depicts the difference between like a yellowish red and a greenish yellow, is that intent. And so, but before I move forward, what I want to do, a couple different things here. I just want to go back to Chris's comment about the bodyguard that they kept taking slams, but kept moving because of the peer pressure. What tends to happen in those situations is our brain is amazing at cataloging memory and emotional aspects along with it. And obviously the more emotional, the more that we remember that. And so unfortunately with that guy that kept taking the slams, even though he was forcing himself, and we've all seen people do this, is their body is starting to create an avoid response in their subconscious that they aren't even aware of yet. And basically they want it so bad that they're like, I've got to do this. But meanwhile, they've already scared the shit out of their psyche. They've already scared the shit out of their subconscious, that their subconscious is sitting there being like, no, don't do this again. So they are pulling away. And so at that point, they are releasing stress hormones, and they are going closer, like you said, Chris, going right into that red. And so unfortunately, the only thing that's going to help that person get out of that is to get out of whatever that situation is that's forcing them to continue to do it at that rate, as opposed to them learning it themselves. And I just wanted to share my 2 cents with that. And then one other thing here is, so Tony, you talked about being scared shitless, but being able to pull it out. And so what that is basically that is that sense of urgency. You're overcoming that fear, and then you're basically rising to accommodate that sense of urgency. And then like Chris said, we all have tendencies that we tend to do when we feel uncomfortable. So Tony, you're probably so tuned into what you do when you feel uncomfortable that you knew to anticipate it and override it in order to get the desired outcome. Does that make sense?
Just before we move on, I think Chandler and Lynn had a little thing. If you want to just respond, Tony, and then Chandler and Lynn. Of
course.
Chandler? Nope. Lynn?
I was thinking about it. It seems like it's a lot of internal assessment and metacognition, especially with what you were talking about, Tony. That metacognition will probably not come into play for somebody who is a first day snowboarder, Chris, like you were talking about. But then you also need to do kind of a collective review, because it seems like experiences in books like Deep Survival, the author talks to and assesses the people who were able to survive and why they were able to survive and how they were able to survive. And even if they were metacognitively able to figure things out themselves, the author's the one working with them, or whoever's interviewing is working with them to help them determine that was what happened.
That's a great point, Lynn. And actually, I was just rereading through some of my notes with the book before we came on, and there was a part where it talks about, I believe the climber's name was Simpson. I think it was the one where he had to cut the rope. And basically what he does is he goes through the aspect because he understands the mental breakdown, and he understands that if he allows his thoughts to go into a certain place, that he's basically lost, that he's gone into despair. And so his entire thing, like all of his notes from his whatever, from the journal that he kept, I believe, or the notes that he gave afterwards, was basically along the lines, he's like, I know that if I let my brain go down this road, I'm gonna die. And that's kind of really, but I mean, obviously, like I said, the book takes these things into a much wider spectrum than what we're dealing with out there. You know, we're just talking about consequences of possibly falling on our ass. So, but yeah, so I agree with you. I think there's a lot to be recognized with that. So whether or not you're aware of the process or not, you know, and even if you're aware of the process, you can still become victim of it. So here's this next rider here. Let me take it back. This was such a great day. I miss snowboarding so much. So let's chat about that guy. Could you guys see him well enough?
A little bit.
I could see him, but he was kind of stop motion-y, a little better. Looks like kind of some sprays, little like counter movements going on. Looked like they were having a good time and, you know, trying to express themselves the way they wanted to through those turns and get some face shots.
Yeah, from what I can see, it looks like he's riding, or they are riding, maybe a little bit beyond their means, because the powder is promoting like an aggressive mindset. So they probably like green in the head, but maybe lack the skill to back up the desire a little bit. I mean, but it's hard to say because it still looks a little stop actiony, but looked like a fun day.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, if you could see him moving through it, you could, I mean, probably tell there's a little bit more intent. So, you know, when he was trying to slash the snow basically. And so like I was saying, like, you know, we kind of look at speed control through turn shape to encourage rhythm and flow, you know, and he kind of threw it sideways a little bit here and there, which could be viewed as as an uncomfortable reaction of somebody who doesn't have skill. And then obviously, you know, you can also use it with intention once you do have the skill. So, sorry guys, hold on a second. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. Come on. Oh, I did it again. Oops. Hold on. Sorry.
We hear you, Britney Spears. We hear you.
Where is? I shut it down. Sorry, guys. Where is that at? Okay, for some reason I shut that program down. And it's not coming back up. Thanks for your patience.
Hey, while you're bringing that back up, is the assessment accurate? So it sounds like you're agreeing with our assessment because you can see that video. You were there, I'm assuming.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Let's see here. Okay, here we go, and boom, and boom. Okay, can you guys see the screen now?
Oh, here it is. We got you now.
There we go. Thanks, man. All right. So yeah. I mean, Chris, yeah, I definitely agree. You know, and obviously I'm familiar with these riders too. These are all people that I train with. You know, and so that was kind of his intent. And I probably would have put him, you know, I would probably put him more on the greener side of if it did get to yellow, it got there for like a split second. But once again, like you were saying, like it's hard to know unless you knew what the person's intent was, you know. So you know, I feel at that time he was trying to do a couple of slashes at that time. So, but I mean, either way, you know, we don't really know until we chat with him about it. Be like, did you intend to do that, or were you scared of something? You know, so. Okay, so where would we put this person?
They were thinking green for a second, and then it got red as they approached the jump. They're like, oh, shit.
And so that gets into that blocking defensive movements. You know, we start to lose the flow there. This one's kind of interesting. God, it keeps doing this. Sorry.
That rider looked like it was like green, yellow, red, but you know, like real quickly.
Real fast.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Was
Thank
that
you.
Pam Briley?
That is Pam.
Yeah, that's. I'm impressed that she's going off jumps. That's sweet.
You should have seen it. She did the cliff drop above. This is rock slide, so she did the cliff drop above it.
No way. That's awesome.
I was super stoked for her, but it was so funny. I was going to get video of her, and I actually dropped my phone because I was so busy yelling directions to her. I was like, but yeah, that's Pam. Pam did great that day.
That freeze frame is awesome. Well, you just had it back there before with the straight legs and the hinging in the air was
right.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So it's like green, yellow, and red.
Yeah.
Yeah, red right there.
It's just so extended and open and scared.
Yep.
You know, late, done.
Totally. And we'll go ahead and chat about this in the next slide here. I think it's the next slide or two, but we start talking about the common tendencies. So so there's Pam. So now check this one out. This one's kind of interesting. Could you guys see that one enough?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty tough read. She looks comfortable, or I'm assuming comfortable, right? I'm assuming they're green, but it very much could be a very timid thing if they're riding at a speed that's just beyond their skill set or something, and they're pushing themselves right here. But it looks quite comfortable.
I was gonna say, this looks like a yellow to me.
I was thinking yellow as well, just because
like throughout the whole thing.
Yes. She's not riding with a ton of like authority. And she's definitely riding her board versus like driving it. And so, yeah, it just looks a little caution-y to me, which is yellow in my head.
I'm going to go with that posed and poised again that you brought up earlier. This is very posed.
Very posed.
Very posed. And, yeah, kind of back to Tony's thing, like, you know, looks like in pretty good control, but could be absolutely shitting herself. So, who knows?
Uh, definitely more like initiating aggressive at first, and then once you start generating speed, got like really yellow, and pretty center stance, and then just got cautious. Yeah, more of the yellow red as she went through the finish of her turn, and it's late and scared and nervous. Like just started picking up so much speed and hard to catch up.
Cool. Chris, I think you started going down this road, but what would it take for this person to, we're talking more of in the yellow zone. How much would it take for this person to end up in the red? And
I think probably a little more pitch, a little more speed would probably do it. But that's assuming that they're uncomfortable right now at all. That's assuming that they're actually in a yellow state. I mean, back to Tony's presentation on ride versus drive. I mean, ride is played down. It's not, it's looked over, and this might be very comfortable riding for that person. I mean, I think Tony made a very good point, and I'll reflect back on it. Like to make the assumption automatically that that person is necessarily defensive or scared or yellow is assuming that they've been taught to ride a different way and aren't achieving that. So it's like, if we were looking at them from, our standards, from the way we assess things, in terms of, general instruction, there are lots of things that you can see that look, rigid or timid or like they're slightly challenged. But at the same time, if that's just someone you were videoing them and they were just cruising around, that could be them having the best day of their life right there. And it'd be hard to say. So the one thing I don't see are really defensive, over aggressive movements or mechanics. I don't see a lot of, I think what would push them, to answer your question though, long story short, is if that is their skill set, if they are near the top end of their skill set right now, if it got a little steeper, if it got a little icier, if the crowd, if there was a heavier crowd, if they increase the speed by opening the turns up or something like that, then I think you'd probably see this rider start to really break down. And then I would agree with the whole group that, yeah, maybe they're riding in a yellow state. But that would be the test, right? We'd have to have that test to be able to see it. So kind of to Tony's point.
That's a great point. I mean, this totally is an assumption, and this is kind of about reading. What do I say? I think I can't remember if it was Corey or Lynn earlier talking about the self-assessment, constantly happening as we kind of go through this. Now, I guess this would be my next question is, like, if you watch this as a demo, for linked turns, closed turns, it's not far off. And so what would be the difference that we would see in, somebody like Conrad giving this demonstration, with very little movement, working from a very posed position to a posed position for the sake of the demonstration? Would we see something different?
Yeah, I mean, I think first assessment you'd see probably from someone like a Conrad. And I don't know how Conrad rides, by the way, but I'm going to make an assumption he's a solid rider. I'd say probably he's like, no, never. But I mean, the joints would probably be more evenly flexed, right? In the legs, for example, the ankles and knees would probably look a little different. The body, the center of mass would probably be balanced in a different position over the board if he was riding positional at his confidence level. So there would be some pretty critical things that would pop right away. Those are just a couple.
And that's for us too, with the, what do I say, with the trained eye, obviously, as somebody else, they wouldn't pick up on that, so somebody who doesn't really know that much about our sport. So, cool. Awesome. Any other input? All right. Yeah, Macy, she did great improvements this year. She's primarily a skier, but she comes out with us and hangs out, and she's definitely been pushing it a little bit. Okay, so now this is the same guy that we saw in the powder earlier, and so this is Chris, this will kind of give you a little bit more of a, what do I say, an idea as far as kind of like his riding style and stuff, and hopefully it's not too much stop motion here for you, but I'll go ahead and play through. There's 3 riders here, and I want you to watch all 3 of them. What do you guys think? Could you see enough?
So it looks like a boy, girl. And really what I kind of saw is green to yellowish with the second rider. And the reason I say that is because when he first got in there, he's a little hesitant, and then he opened up and started ripping. And the last rider is kind of skidding and looking over like, okay, what's the next bump? Almost like searching for turns versus letting it flow.
I'm going to go with that social thing again. It seems like, they're being filmed. This guy in the middle wants to do like a little stall or something towards you. It seems like that dude in the middle kind of wants to push himself a little. He obviously gets hung up on that bump, so maybe that's kind of indicative of a yellow. Again, maybe a little harder to say. And that person in the back looks like they were just kind of cruising along for the ride. They didn't want to charge out ahead. So maybe that's more of a yellow as well. But again, it's hard to say.
I was going to say that first rider definitely looks like greenish, but probably is developing their ability to work with terrain. I mean, and getting to the place where they're starting to cross over into a higher level, but much more fluid than the other two, much more confidence the other two. So more green than the second rider, for example, but still probably in this type of terrain, if the snow were any firmer or there any less of it, I think they'd probably be kind of challenged. The second rider, I think Conrad is kind of nailing this. I think definitely was trying to do something there to make something happen for the video and was out of their depth just a tiny bit. So probably, as Kevin put it, that green to yellow. And the third rider certainly just trying to pick a line that works well for their ability level. So could also, it's funny because going back to Tony's comment about context, really, I mean, that could be relatively green level riding for the third rider. Just their skill set is lower. And so they're choosing a totally different set of tactics to manage that terrain. But if you were just comparing the three to each other, you got a more green, a little more green yellow, and a solid yellow to maybe a little red.
McKellar, then Lynn.
Spicky, I just need a little bit more clarification because just listening to this conversation, it just sounds like we're ripping people apart from a judgmental point of view. At the end of the day, we don't know what the task is. We don't know who these people are, their backgrounds and stuff like that. And I feel like as instructors, we're already known as judgmental people, and this is just reinforcing it on my point. So I just need a little bit more clarification as to where you're going with this. Just to have a little bit more feedback. That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So what it comes down to is basically I'll continue with going through the rest of my presentation here. But ideally what I've noticed is being able to start to notice when that student or myself, and this doesn't happen to us that often to where we have to really worry about, with our skill set and our experience, we have learned to overcome, like Chris was talking about with the first rider. He's probably working to, what do I say, accommodate a sense of urgency. Okay. And so is the second guy, but they're both at different stages of development. And that third person is basically trying to stay out of despair. And my whole thing is not about cutting people down. So when I started doing research on comfort, confidence, and commitment and all the neurology that supported that, that's all going down the positive road. So we keep things comfortable so they can be confident, so they understand what they're doing and they can do it and they can commit 100% to that. So then I started going on the other end of the spectrum as far as, so there's got to be a whole nother area there as far as skill acquisition and then the comfort within that skill as well. And so that's why I kind of started going down this road of a sense of urgency versus despair. And so the whole idea is, once again, is to be able to identify it within ourselves. If we can identify it within ourselves, that helps us to be empathetic to the students that we teach. And then for me, what it does is it keeps me from getting a student in over their head. And so, or if I do start to get into a situation like that, how I override that. And I'll share a quick story. It was probably the last week that we were open, And I had this family, and it was skiers and snowboarders. And it was probably like, I want to say 3 skiers, 3 snowboarders. And it was a bunch of teenage age people, and then the dads. And so everybody skied very well or slid very well. They were all very competent. They can do many different things. Okay. So I took them to an area to where basically there was a place where we had to traverse across probably about, I don't know, 15 feet. And it was above a cliff face. And it was we probably had about 2 inches of snow to slide across on this face. And so, it's easy, but not mentally easy. It was mentally fatiguing and draining. So when I saw these guys, when they started coming across, I started to see them go into the red. And what I was afraid of is them going into the red over the cliff face and sliding all the way down, stiff, defensive, and all this kind of stuff. So and this is just an example of what I'm talking about here as far as the purpose of this presentation, is that, so when I saw that happening, I had to constantly engage their focus and their attention in order to get them to do what I knew that they could do without them being able to ruminate on the situation that they're in, because they started to get emotional and I could see it. And so what I did is I basically kept their attention, and I kept them striving toward the goal. And so everybody made it across. Everybody was super stoked. Everybody was super elated. We went to lunch. Everybody was talking about that aspect there. It was the highlight of their day, but it could have easily and very quickly been the worst part of their experience and their trip. And so that's why I'm bringing up this awareness and this mindfulness, not to cut people down, but to understand where their comfort level is and basically try to keep them in the good headspace to where their brain's not releasing stress hormones. Long story short, or long story boring, I should say. So.
Hey, Spicky, Kevin here. As I was watching this and I'm thinking about sense of urgency and what that means in our riding versus despair, from an outsider's perspective, I think the example that resonates with me is, have you ever just charged some bumps and you were all over the place, arms flailing, you're slash turning, hopping bumps, and it looks like you're out of control, but you're actually riding with a huge sense of urgency? But to someone from the chairlift or someone, that doesn't know you, they may look at that as a sense of despair and like you're just all over the place to try and survive. So I think for me, that's what really, that perspective of being able to see a guest and not tear them down, but say, you know what, that looks within their skill zone, and that looks more like a sense of urgency versus, oh no, they're in a sense of despair. How do I bring them up to the level where they're comfortable in that terrain?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. It's we've all seen the people that can do things, and for them it's what, I kind of go into operational versus recovery mode. And so for them it can be operational. And so maybe they are in the green when they're doing that, and as we know, they're probably working way harder than they need to. And if we were to increase their terrain or the skill or whatever we're trying to work on, we might have to regress to progress with them, So like somebody like that, I would be concerned about, being able to take them on very steep terrain and have them, achieve speed control through turn shape. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We've all seen it. We've all seen the what do I want to say, the shimmy, shimmy, shake in the bumps, and they're having a great time. And so, you don't want to take anything away from that. And that's not what I'm trying to do by any means. But, so once again, it is an assessment of whether or not they're green or they're red, and whether or not they're doing it with intent.
Hey, I just want to start wrapping this topic here up a little bit to start to move on to Chris's, so we don't take too much time here tonight. Do you want to wrap it up a little bit here, Spicky, or do you want to let some other people have some last thoughts?
Yeah, let me go ahead and pop through these. So real quick, I'll just pop through these slides. So being aware of the tendencies that I was talking about, the more that we understand our tendencies, the more we can anticipate and override. And I think we've already kind of mentioned some of the common tendencies, but I'll go ahead and pull out the top 3 that I think of is being aft of center, broken at the waist, and open to the nose of the board. Depending on whether or not that's with intent or not. But those tend to be our common tendencies. The bounce back, the amount of stress hormones, like I was saying before, is proportionate to how much we're threatened. And obviously, the less stress, the more we can mitigate that stress, the more we can say, oh yeah. The less we can, the more we start to go into that, oh no. Fear is good, too much fear is not. This is a quote from Lawrence's book once again. And then this is kind of what I like as well, that kind of supports the oh yeah. And it's more so along the lines of like, that to live it all is to fly upside down. People died in 1999 while choking on food. Or 640 people died in 1999 choking on food. 320 drowned in the bathtub. You're already flying upside down. You might as well have fun. So once again, it's not about breaking them down. It's about kind of reinforcing, like, yeah, let's do this. Let's go with the oh yeah of this. Okay. And so, but yeah, anyways, I'd be more than happy to entertain any discussions or questions.
I have heard you talk about this before, Spicky, in some of the clinics that I've attended with you. And it's sweet to see a little bit more of the thought process behind it. I'd maybe want you to speak about maybe a little bit, just kind of how you're bringing people up from that, yellow zone to the green zone, or from the red to the yellow. How you're able to do that sometimes.
Well, I would say it's probably easier with the more freaked out people, if that makes any sense. Those are the ones that show the biggest change. And so what that is basically because it's a perceived threat for them. And so, what kind of comes to mind is basically how I can let them know that they're okay. And that the threat is not what they think that it is, and try to shift their perception of that to an oh yeah as opposed to an oh no. And so, like I said, we can see the ones that orally, that verbally say that they want to be oh yeah, but you can physically see that they're oh no. And so that's when you got to kind of sit there and ask them to be honest with them, or at least this is what I've done before, is ask them to be honest with themselves and work with their comfort. And be kind to themselves through that process. Oddly enough, there's a certain, part of our culture that kind of tunes into that approach. There's another part of our, culture that doesn't, so, and I'm going to go with older people tend to sit there and, they attach on to this because they're like, I want to take my time. I want this to be a good time. I want to feel good with this. Whereas like somebody else might be getting pressure from somewhere else. It might be peer pressure, it might be pressure that they put on themselves. And they're the ones that tend to be a little bit harder on themselves. And I actually see them go through a longer learning process because they aren't kind to themselves. It's kind of like lifting weights. If you go in and you put a whole bunch of weight on the bar and you can't lift them, then you start calling yourself names and all that kind of stuff. Whereas if you just took your time and went back and put smaller weights on and built yourself up, you're going to feel good all the way through. So that's kind of the crux with that, so.
Sweet. Anybody else got any final thoughts on this topic? No. All right. Sweet, guys. Thanks very much, Spicky. Thanks for presenting. Great topic. It's sweet to think about that in a bunch of different situations with ourselves and with our students. So next we've got Chris Hargrave presenting. And what is your topic, Chris?
Much to Tony's dismay, it will be the science of fun this time, and the next time it will be out of presentation and into process. Just to give you some insight on that, Tony, I'm working on a piece of that out of presentation and want to put a little more time into it. So next Monday I'll be doing that. Hold on a second. But this one is science of fun, and for any of you who have seen me present this before, this will be different because it's on a Zoom call, and that's going to be weird. So there is that. First of all, I just want to say, Spicky, that was awesome. Thank you. Very thought-provoking. I appreciate it. And secondly, totally humbled to be able to present to this group. It's so cool to be able to interact with the Rocky Mountain core specifically, and just feel a connection there. It's awesome. I mean, I haven't lived in Colorado in many years, but I'm very thankful to have this opportunity. So I'm going to do my best to try to keep this engaging for you guys. And I want to start with this. This presentation really is all about fun. So we're going to focus in there. If you guys could get a piece of paper and something to write with. If you don't have it right in front of you, grab a pen, a crayon, cut your finger and make it bleed. You could use that. That'll be fine. Whatever works for you guys. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Tony. Yes. use your friend's blood, not your own. I like that. And here's what I want you guys to do. While I'm presenting, I want you to draw as many things, as many grab positions on your snowboard as you possibly can. You can do 1 if you want to make it really good. You can do 10 if you're just a doodler and you're doing stick figures. I don't care. I want you to go ahead and do that. And feel free to be distracted as I go through this and just relax. You guys don't have to sit here and be totally locked into what I'm saying. You're going to check in and check out anyways. And what I'd rather you do is spend some time, creatively thinking about it. Now, before you draw it though, picture it in your mind as perfect as possible, and then assess your own ability to create that art as you go through it. That'll be fun for you just in the doing. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys, if that's okay. We'll see if it works. And I'm getting better at this Zoom thing, but I apologize. Can you guys see my screen? Thumbs up. All right, thank you. We'll go into the slideshow right here. Play from current slide. All right, I think I got it. So what is fun? If you guys want to go ahead and unmute, unless you have a noisy background, this will be an interactive experience. So you can talk over each other. There's not that many of us. There's like 13 or 14 people on this. So go ahead and be unmuted. And that way I can hear what Tony and Mike are saying to each other, because it seems pretty funny, whatever it is. They're making jokes about me. This piece of this, I'm going to kind of tell you guys a story about where this comes from and share with you a little bit about the logic behind it. But I always ask groups of people, and usually doing this in front of massive groups of people, but I'm always asking them, can you create fun? Can you measure fun? Can you manage fun? Those kind of things. And I'll tell you a little story about where this came from. A few years ago, I got to work with the leading expert in the science of fun in the gaming industry. In the gaming industry, there's a lot of thought that goes into the science of how rapidly you're re-engaged in the use of a game. So does anybody have a favorite game that you play on your phone? Throw it out there.
Words with Friends.
What is it?
Words with Friends.
Words with Friends. Okay. Kind of boring, but no judgment. Seriously, no judgment.
I think it's the only game I have on my phone.
Call of Duty.
Pocket Puzzle.
Pocket Puzzle.
Clash of Clans.
What was that one?
Clash of Clans.
Wow, you're a Clash of Clanster. My friend Ryan Christopherson plays that, and he's like very proud of himself because he's been the president of a clan for a long time. and I think it's hilarious. Which one? What do you got? Call of Duty? Oh, he's a Call of Duty. Johnny Trigger is an awesome game. So if you want mindless fun, Johnny Trigger, fun game.
Instagram.
Okay, Kevin. That's not
like,
really
don't like.
Yes. So
sounds like Tinder.
What was that one?
I was making a joke about Tinder. It's the same thing as Instagram. Like, okay. Don't like, don't like.
Wait, what's Tinder?
It's a dating app.
Just kidding. Got you.
I was like, wait, what?
I've never used Tinder before that you know of or that you'll ever know. Just kidding. I've been married since before anything ever happened. So, but
the dinosaurs, huh?
Yeah, right. So anyways, this gal, Nicole Lazaro, I'll give her credit for the 4 kinds of fun, which we'll get into here in a few minutes, but she came to a resort called Sierra at Tahoe out in the Lake Tahoe area. And I was doing a train-based learning program there, and she showed up with 2 of her colleagues, and they were going to learn how to snowboard because she was going to do a presentation for a whole bunch of ski resort industry experts, and she wanted to have some experience. So she came up and went through this with me. I noticed throughout the entire process, she was stopping and making notes. And I was so concerned. I'm like, oh my gosh, I must be just completely blowing it. And it was incredible what came out of this. And I'll get to some of the details here. I'll get more into the story as we go. But essentially, as she's making all these notes, she kind of came up with these thoughts and these ideas, and was relating her experience snowboarding to what she does in the gaming industry. And she gave me a few really critical things. And at one point, I remember seeing her looking at her watch and then making notes, and looking at her watch and making notes. And I kind of asked her, I got to ask her, like, what are you doing? Like, are you bored? Is this not fun for you? You know, and she kind of said, no, this is amazing. She said, but she's like, if you notice me looking at my watch, I'm timing you. She says, I'm trying to see how rapidly you re-engage the people in this group. And she asked me how often I thought I did it. And I said, I don't know, once a minute maybe, or something like that. And she said, no, every 6 seconds. And that blew my mind. And I asked her to explain more. What do you mean? What do you mean every 6 seconds I'm re-engaging the group? You mean I'm teaching something every 6 seconds? Because that doesn't seem possible. She's like, no, not at all. Sometimes you're teaching something. Sometimes you're congratulating us. Sometimes you're correcting us. Sometimes you're moving the group. Sometimes you're just cheering us on. Sometimes you're making us rest. Sometimes you ask us to watch what the other people are doing. And she said, in this natural, you know, lesson experience that you're giving, she's like, you're just doing this naturally, and I'm timing you every 6 seconds. Every time I've timed you, you've been right around 6 seconds. And it kind of blew my mind. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm not doing anything weird. I'm not rushing. I'm just doing what I naturally do in that environment. And that's what came out of it. And then she went on further to teach me about these 4 kinds of fun. Now, before we get to that, I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions. Okay. What is fun? That's the first question. Do you guys have a definition of fun? Go ahead and go.
Having a good time.
Having a good time. Okay. Who else?
Anytime you're laughing.
Anytime you're laughing. Except for when you're laughing instead of crying, right? That might be the only exception. Okay, what else?
Challenging myself.
Okay, challenge is fun for you. Awesome. What else?
And I'm positively engaged.
You feel positively engaged. Yeah. Okay, what else?
Hanging out with the homies.
Hanging out with the homies. Yes, that could be a
inclusivity.
Inclusivity. I like that. Yep. Inclusivity is good.
Snowboarding.
Motivation.
Snowboarding, motivating. Yeah, snowboarding is fun. Now there's any others? Okay, there's actually a school at Stanford that is the National Institute for Play. And it's headed up by a guy named Dr. Stuart Brown. And they've spent like 30 years literally studying the impact of play on humanity. And their suggestion is some of their theories are wrapped up in, and a lot of people call this junk science, but anyways, I love this stuff. Their theories are wrapped up in on how a healthy sense of play in childhood might have an impact on the way people behave as adults. So for example, maybe there's something to a healthy sense of play as a child and becoming a serial killer or CEO. I'll put them in the same category because that's probably where they belong. Oh, come on, man. Give me something. I saw like 2 smiles. Okay. All right. So
No, totally.
if you're a CEO in the group, I apologize in advance. But they've put a lot of science and study into this over the last 30 years. Dr. Stuart Brown defines the definition of fun as doing something simply for the sake of doing it because it feels good. And he says, if it feels good to you, you're probably going to want to do it again. And if it keeps feeling good, you're going to keep wanting more of it. And I know you guys have talked a little bit about flow theory. It sounds like I'll talk a little bit about that tonight too. But the way we're built is once we taste fun, that same type of fun over a period of time no longer is as much fun. So then we want more of that fun in greater amounts or different ways. And a lot of this relates right back to what Nicole Lazzaro was teaching me about the 4 kinds of fun. So the question I'll ask you guys is, can fun be measured? Is it possible to measure and manage fun? Yes or no? Thoughts?
I can measure within myself as to like prior experiences. Sure.
Right. Okay, fair. Anyone else?
You can measure it by the size of someone's smile.
Ooh, not bad. I even like the way you said that. Like all kind of coy right there. That was good.
How about the dollars to cents ratio?
Dollars to cents ratio. Explain.
Well, if it costs more, I'm not entitled to have as much fun. But if it costs less, fun is for free.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so you're saying that the more free it is, then philosophically, the more fun you can have. Okay, fair enough. I like that. I'm with it. Okay, so go ahead, Chandler. Do you have one?
Yeah, so it doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have. You can still have fun, no matter where you live. Doesn't matter. If you're in poverty, you can still find fun to bring your kids out on skis or boards or even go sledding. And if you're in wealthy, yeah, you can have fun. Even that, like bring them out to ice cream. Go, just so much fun you can have.
Totally. There's a picture on the. Oh, go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
I was going to say sometimes people will attribute fun to competition. Like if there's a certain rules and like you want to beat somebody else, so it's like more fun. For me, like I don't ever play video games by myself. I only play video games when I can talk shit against somebody else.
Fair enough. And
Right,
also
okay.
a total lie. I know you play games by yourself. Stop lying. Just kidding. Anybody else before I go on to the next thing? I can't see all your pictures. This is why I'm asking.
You measure fun by like hooking up electrodes to your brain and looking at brain waves.
Now, yeah, they actually have studied that at the Institute for Play. So yes, you can measure the state, the way you can measure brain activity while in a state of fun or flow, if you will. They certainly have done that. And I would say, now there are varying theories about that, and I'm not going to get into it, but what I will say is that brain activity, heightened brain activity versus a decreased brain activity, both versions could be associated with fun. Both could, because sometimes being heavily challenged, as Tony put it, which might cognitively you might have a lot more action going on versus where you're in a some people. I mean, look, I don't use, but some people use marijuana and they like to just chill out, and that's fun for them. Like getting super mellow. Sorry, for lack of a better example. So yes, I would say yes, brain activity can be connected to it, but then it's also, you got to have context, just like the last conversation we were having about how well those individuals were snowboarding in those videos. Anything else on managing fun? Okay, I'll ask you the next question. Can you create fun? Can you as a person create fun for yourself or for others? Can you force it, I guess maybe is a better way to look at it.
I think that goes to being more of an extrovert or an introvert, right? Like more of your propensity to generate for somebody else or more of your propensity to generate for yourself.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that's
like a lot of, I was gonna say, I feel like a lot of people make other people have fun by tickling them, like talk about laughing.
Tickling?
And sometimes you can force somebody to laugh, but they don't enjoy it.
I see that a lot, especially with, you're right, like with the instructors with kids in the past, it's probably increasingly less now, but certainly if you had a kid that was down, you might tickle them to make them laugh and try to get them out. I do that to my own children and it works sometimes. Usually they just stay pissed off at me. They're like, now you just made me laugh when I don't want to laugh and I like you less.
Yeah.
What about telling a joke?
Absolutely. So humor, there are several formulas of comedy, but there are 11 that are very common. The most common in practice is called the callback. And that's where it's like an inside joke. Does Rocky Mountain have a good inside joke? I'm going to ask that right now. Are there any good? Okay, wait, we have one that happened today. It's called the Corey Lambert Wrecking Ball. And they're called the corrugated tubes, aren't they?
Tubes, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a callback joke, right? So if you guys want to, if I like crash miserably in this presentation, just relate it back to Corey's crash on that tube and you've got a perfect callback. That's the formula for a callback. Sorry, Corey, at your expense.
It's all good.
But yes, so comedy is huge. And I was saying this I did a presentation on Friday where I was talking about the importance of laughter, especially with athletes. one of the key things when athletes are in a performance environment where it's no longer time to teach rather, it's time to keep them emotionally focused. Some athletes respond well to discipline and power and aggression, and some athletes, they just need to stay lighthearted. A lot of snowboarders, most snowboarders that I've worked with in the start box, for example, they just want me to keep it light. They don't want me to talk about serious things. They don't want like a deep inspirational moment. They just want me to tell them a joke or, make them laugh or, tease with them, that kind of thing. So keeping it light can be really, really important, Kevin. What else? Can you manufacture fun? Are you guys familiar with Tenacious D?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so one of my favorite episodes from the HBO shorts, if you've never seen Tenacious D, you got homework now, okay? You got homework. Now, it's called The Road to Inspirato, and Jack Black literally loses his mind for a week because they finally get a gig, but he's got to write a new song. And then he goes in this whole thing, and he's like, I got to write a song. And at first, they're like really excited, and then they can't write a new song. They get writer's block, and they keep going on and on through all these different emotional states. It's like they go through the stages of grief and everything as they go through it. And finally, Jack Black is like all sweaty, and he's like right up in the camera. He's like, what is Inspirato? You can't manufacture Inspirato. It's just that he goes, it's awesome. It's one of my favorite moments of Jack Black. But check it out, because I tend to agree. You can't manufacture it, but I think you can create an opportunity where you understand it and you understand the people you're working with to a point where you give them the best opportunity to have fun. And the rest, it's kind of like that lead the horse to water, and drink analogy. Fair enough.
Is that like that similar story? I'm sure everyone's heard the story about like where a PE teacher, I believe it was in England, took a group of kids out on the field and gave them a ball and told them to play, and they played for a little bit, and then took the same group of kids to a different field and set up a course with a couple of goals and gave them some brief outline, some brief rules, and then told them to play, and they had more fun because there's a little bit more of so that teacher created that fun experience by giving them a little bit of like rules and regulations sort of thing.
Absolutely. When we talk about gamifying things,
yeah,
that's where you take something that maybe initially it's a pretty good feeling whenever you learn something, right? So if you'd never kicked the ball before and your teacher gave you a ball on a field and said, hey, go kick the ball, you'd have fun kicking the ball for a little bit. But then after a while, if you don't have some kind of a direction to channel that, it's like, now I want you to kick the ball through the hoop into the goal, off your friend's face, and then hit the other kid in the ass. If you can do that, then you win. Like as you build these rules, absolutely, that's what naturally has to happen to maintain that flow state, if you will. But to keep people having fun, that certainly is a part of it. Sometimes you have to back down too. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I want to say the most interesting things I see are the people that don't have rules or regulations to govern their creativity. And they come up with this whole new, unique perspective on something that blows everybody's mind, because we're so used to, putting everything into a box and saying, hey, you can't go outside this line or else.
Oh, you are spot on. Spot on. Think about this. How many times, because I love what you just did. You just redirected the conversation. And the only thing it took for that to happen was for me to say nothing and allow you to redirect the conversation, because you just made me think of one of my favorite thoughts, one of my favorite quotes, which is, and for a guy like me who likes to talk, right, and likes to lead, I like to lead. These are things I like to do. To listen truly with the intent to understand versus the intent to respond is a very powerful thing. And same thing is true with creativity. To give people freedom to create and drive their own learning, their own experience forward with maybe some guidance, some facilitation, right, is an incredibly powerful tool, because you just don't know where they'll take you and what you'll learn from them, where the conversation might go. And I absolutely love that, because the more I've presented and trained and traveled, the more I've started to realize that my best clinics, my best moments are the ones where I come in and I kind of have a starting point, which is sort of the ending point too, but it's a thought. It's like, today I'm going to go out and try to make 7 new friends with this group. I'm going to have the best time with these 7 people. That's my goal. It used to be my focus was, I'm going to teach them these 5 really important things. And the more I focus on that on that much bigger picture goal, the more opportunity it is for them to bring creativity into the mix and for me to feed off that. The more they give, the easier it is for me to lead, right? The more we put into this as a group, the more interesting and memorable the experience becomes. Is that a fair way to look at it? Yep. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to share with you a thought on, there's a photo on the screen right now. That's me and my daughter. And I actually look kind of like uptight, and she's just having a blast because we went and did this inflatable race. And it's like you run like, the better part of 4 miles or something like that. But every half mile or so, there's a big inflatable play structure. And my daughter and I thought we'd be done with this thing and just go through once, but she wanted to lap all the inflatables over and over and over again. And there was one with like these big red balls, like that TV show Wipeout. You guys remember that TV show Wipeout? Yeah. Where everybody had to run across the red balls. And I was the idiot who kept falling. And she wanted to do it over and over again just to watch me fall multiple times. Like, she had the best time ever watching me just like take face plant after face and tumble. And it was hilarious. And I kept doing it because I knew how much fun she was having, even though it sucked for me. But it was amazing, right? And she just like, she was in her place. All my wife had to do was find a Groupon for this thing. And then off we went. And I had no idea how much fun it was actually going to be. I had the best time ever. And I keep thinking back, I always throw that up there because, our ideas of fun vary, but when you are watching it happen, exactly that it's happening. When people are having a good time, you feed off that too, like any good instructor does, right? Well, let's see if I can advance this thing here effectively. All right, here's a version of fun for me. So this is just going to play over and over. I want you to keep listening and let it build up in your head. What do you notice? Okay, so what are you guys keying into? You can say it out loud.
That's somebody's reaction?
Yeah. So if you go to China and you do a backflip into an airbag, all of a sudden you're a freaking superhero. That's I do these camps over in China, and we design micro airbags for the camps so people can learn their first air or their first backflip, their first spin, that kind of thing. And people love it, right? But it was amazing to me that these people were so excited about it that they were having a blast watching it. That day, I'll tell you a little story about it. Let me see if I can pause this video. See, I'll get a good opportune spot.
Okay, real fast, I just want to say that I drew you.
Yes, you totally drew me. That's totally me. Yep. That actually resembles me exactly. I have a very stick figure-esque body type. But so on that day, that actually was that day. That day they recorded me doing 40 backflips. There were a little more than that. Not all of them to my feet, some of them to my head and like all kinds of different ways. And it was funny because when we started that day, I was really nervous. It was the first day I had ridden the airbag that I designed, right? And first I sort of straight aired it and I was nervous. I didn't know if I could land it, that kind of thing. But as I got into it, I stopped coaching and I started becoming a snowboarder. I got completely lost in this moment and I had no idea how many reps I had done. And, I'm not like a 25-year-old spring chicken here. I'm 43 years old. At that time, I think I was 40. I think I was 40. And in any event, at about 5:30 p.m., my friend Iway calls me over and he's like, "Hey, Chris, come here." I'm like, "What's up, man?" He's like, "Let me see your board." And I'm like, "Did I break it? What's wrong with my board?" I started freaking out. I'm like, "Did I break my board?" I'm like, "I want to go again. I hope I didn't break my board." And he's like, No, just give me your board. And he takes my board and I'm like, "Well, what's wrong?" He's like, "It's 5:30. You're old. It's time for bed. Go home." And I was like, "Dang, come on, man." Like I was having the best time ever. I got so lost in it that it just kept getting better. Everything kept becoming more and more fun. And I was completely lost in it. And that's what happens to us when we're in that flow state, when we're actually having fun. We don't realize what's happening to us. We just know that it feels good and we want more and more and more. I'm sure you guys can visualize certain moments in your life. Okay, go around the group really quick. Give me anybody who has an example of a moment where they were having that much fun. They got completely lost in it. Doesn't matter what it is. This is a safe place. Go.
Okay, so the other day I hiked up a mountain. We went and did backflips, and I was really tired because it was like over an hour hike up, and then it was snowboard down, and then it was hiking. But at the end, I had done 15, 20 backflips or whatever. And then the hike out was obviously miserable, but during the backflip time was like super fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was probably fun, like the whole way in, anticipating it too. There was probably like a build up, right?
Yeah.
Who else has got a fun story?
Yeah, I can remember. I have a similar story to that, like backflips at Copper, Wildcats and stuff like that. But then I would say today with Mike, we started like, I was so kind of like, man, I don't know. I haven't done a front board for a while. And after the first one, I'm like, oh, that's sweet. And just kept hiking. And I felt bad because I looked up like after like 10 or 15 hikes and Mike's just down there videoing me. And I'm like, dude, do you want to go?
Selfish fun. I like it. Anyone else?
Got a story about last summer, rafting, just lapping Class 4 rapids and like hiking the book back up the trail, and wasn't really getting tired at all, or just like wanted to keep going down and couldn't wipe the grin off my face.
Yes.
Like continuing to go, and kind of similar to you, like, you know, didn't really know how many laps I'd done. I just wanted to do more. And yeah, it was ridiculously fun. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Who else?
Oh,
I want you to reflect on fun.
I want.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Spicky.
No, after you, bro.
All right,
All
Chandler,
right. I went on like a 2-week canoe trip up in Maine, and we found a waterfall after like a 2-mile portage over to the springs. And then we hiked up the river, and then we found these natural rocks where we could just shoot down and do a backflip off into the water pool. So that was pretty intense. And then we hopped back out of the water springs, grabbed our canoe, and continued paddling down Class 6 rapids.
That sounds awesome, man. Go for it, Spiggy.
One quick question: is this at Wanlong? This video?
That is. Yeah, that's the base of Wanlong. Yep.
That looked familiar. So one of the cool things, one of the great things about our training this year, one of the themes was a lot of adventures. So we tried to function off the trail map as much as possible. So basically, you know, locals runs, whatever you want to call it, secret stashes, all that kind of stuff. And honestly, I mean, like the shit-eating grin on everybody's face at the end of every day, including mine. And you know, it's a lot like what you were talking about as being part of the learning process as opposed to, you know, trying to lead the learning process. And so, but yeah, man, it was shit-eating grins, doing stuff lines that I haven't hit in, you know, 15 years plus. And just, I mean, and you know, it's a good time too when everybody's talking about it afterwards.
Yep.
You know, everybody's just like, and talking about it for weeks afterwards, you know, so. But anyways, that's been my fun factor with fun.
That is, man, I just got emotional thinking about some of this season, and I'm struggling at times to stay out of that place where I'm like, man, how many things have I taken for granted? But you're spot on. It's like those moments with people where you get lost in it and you're on an adventure together, and the whole thing it's amazing. And I have some stories with people in this group for sure. And I would just say that, you know, as I go through this presentation and listen to your presentations as well, I'm going to reflect back just a little bit. It is incredible to think about how much I took this for granted. I mean, how important this life is to me, you know, how important snowboarding and doing that with my family, with my friends, and that it exists, just that it exists, that people are doing it. Anyway, sorry, I'm going to stop being sentimental. I'm going to keep moving forward. So you guys remember Nicole Azzaro, right? I was talking about Nicole Azzaro. She has a great TED Talk if you want to look her up. She's an amazing human being, super nerdy. For any gamers in the room, you will love her. She's awesome. But as I told you that we took that break, and she kind of broke it down and told me that every 6 seconds I was re-engaging the group, and engagement's critical, is very important. It's absolutely critical. She told me that in the gaming industry, they aim for every 3 seconds. So those games that you showed me earlier, every single one of them, even Words with Friends, are designed to re-engage you in one form or another about every 3 seconds. The more successful the game is, like a Call of Duty, it's an incredibly successful game. Fortnite would be a great version of an incredibly successful game because of the level of engagement and how rapidly it re-engages you. Even when you're in the waiting room in Fortnite, you can do dance moves with your buddies. And like, I mean, kids spend stupid money on dance moves just so they can be more entertained while they're waiting for their game to start. But that's how their brains work. They did a study at Harvard where they measured the attention span of a goldfish and related that to children, and said that goldfish has an attention span of 11 seconds, as do children. So you have about 11 seconds to lose or maintain, hold on to your students. And this is true for adults as well. It's not just children, it's adults as well. It's a very short attention span in terms of engagement. Once the engagement goes down, people start to check out. I'm sure that you don't have to raise your hand or anything, but I'm sure some of you have checked in and out on this presentation. My goal in making it interactive, much like Spicky did, is to keep you more checked in. The more interactivity, the more engagement there is, you know, the easier it is for you to stay involved. And then it's hard on Zoom to read the room and recognize whether or not people are staying engaged and whether I'm losing the room, right? And that's something that's an advantage we have when we're talking to a small group of people, or even a large group inside a building, you know, or a classroom, where we can see what's going on and we can stay engaged and keep them engaged. I always say to people, like at large presentations, because someone always falls asleep, and it's not necessarily because they're bored, it's just because they're tired and they're in a warm room when they want to be outside skiing or snowboarding. And I always warn them that if they fall asleep with their shoes on, I'm going to get them. and like, so I at least give them the rule, like if they're going to fall asleep, they got to take their shoes off. And it's a pretty funny thing. But back to what Nicole was talking about, she then proceeds to tell me that they measure for 4 kinds of fun. And you can see them on the screen there. Easy fun is much like what Tony described. He just, the teacher took him out into the field, gave him a ball and let him play. It's a ball. You just go roll it around, kick it around. Eventually they'll start throwing it at each other and it'll turn into a war. Then kids will fight. They'll start punching. I'm just kidding. Easy fun is just, it's described as something that you don't need any skill, right? In skiing and snowboarding, the closest thing we probably have to that would be like tubing, right? So you can go tubing, and for a half an hour or even an hour of tubing, you're having a pretty good time. But towards the end of that, there's this natural moment where it gets a little boring and you start to do different things. You start running faster. You ask them to spin you when they release you to go down the hill. You want to jump. If you were tubing in your backyard, you'd be building jumps. You know, within 30 minutes, you're definitely going to build a jump and try to see if you can get air and not die, right? And that's how it progresses. And she says it naturally progresses from that stage in the game where, you know, she calls it in games like it's the stage where people can't die. They can practice until they learn the basic skills they need, and they never die. They can keep practicing until they're bored of it. And then they go on to the story mode, or they do like Tony does, where they only play games with friends online. Total bullshit, Tony, but whatever. You're such a liar. You're sitting around all day long playing video games. I know it. Anyways, that whole thing about you guys riding the corrugated tube, that was just like a video game. You're probably playing like some kind of snowboard video game. She progresses into hard fun. And she says hard fun is where you have to earn it. Much like Corey's story, where she had to hike up the hill, and she hiked up a mountain. Then they built the jump. Then they hiked the jump. Then they cycled it, and she practiced, and maybe she was successful on the first try. She's probably super awesome. For me, it would have taken me a few tries. And after a few tries, I'd finally get there, and I'd be so pumped that I was actually landing them. That's the process of earning it. That's hard fun. You have to overcome obstacles. There are new challenges. You have to memorize things and develop skill. You have to become an expert through learning so that you can beat that level in the game, or so that you can call yourself a snowboarder in our case. And she says then to keep people engaged, I'll go back to Tony, and you guys can probably reflect on this quite a lot, but if you don't engage the group, if there's no group dynamic, right, then you lose the group, and video game playing, you know, the usership goes down. And so she says people fun or social fun is incredibly important, because if you can't play games online, you can't tease each other, compete with each other, challenge each other, laugh with each other, cry, learn, all those things together, you're less likely to stay engaged in the video game. And finally, she says there's this thing that she calls fiero, but it's serious fun. It's where you get to a place where life and the thing you're doing just become one. You are a snowboarder. You are a gamer. You might raise your hand if you're a gamer. If you are, I'm only a gamer because of my kids. That's also a lie. I can't hide behind my kids. I like video games. Anyways, she says it's that moment where you become the game. It becomes you. It's a part of your life. You're a part of it. You're a part of the community, right? And that's the thing that we're trying to achieve with our students in terms of these opportunities for fun. Okay, so reflecting on that, let's get back to a little bit of people fun here. Right now, I want to see how many of you actually drew a picture of snowboard grabs, because Corey already shared, so thank you, Corey. And I want you to hold them up to the screen, and let's reflect on your art skills. How are we looking? Yes. Okay, Corey, that's incredible. You're like a very careful dude. Whoa, the mountain scene at the bottom. What? That's amazing. That is
My
awesome.
minor was in art. Not
Okay,
that stick figures show that. But.
Your minor was in art, so the scenery stuff you got, but the stick figures, like human anatomy, you didn't study that, I don't think.
Yeah, no, just weren't my best.
Conrad, what was yours? Hold it up again. I couldn't really see it.
It was just it was a snowboard with lefts and rights for hands position.
Oh my gosh. You are the worst drawer in history. Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you for attempting that. I'm proud of you for trying that. I really appreciate that.
Like
and
Conrad Donkfooting.
Did you actually draw grabs? Do I see a tail block in there? Okay, so right now I want everybody.
Talking to me? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm talking to you, Claire. Yep.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I want everybody to look. Yep.
Technique. I got a suitcase. I got a method. I got a double nose. Oh, that's a double tail. Double nose. I can't see it like backwards through my little square in the screen. I got a indie and nose and tail. Then I think that's a chicken salad. Is that both? Yeah, whatever.
Okay, so right now, here's what the next thing I want everybody in the group to do. Okay, you guys ready?
Oh,
I want you guys all to stand up back away from the camera if you can, so I can still see you. Okay, just a little bit if you can. If you can't, feel free to stay seated. If you have a medical condition or you're a super boring person, don't do this. All right, so the next thing I want you guys to do, all right? I want you to pick any grab that you saw on Claire's sheet, and I want you to simulate the grab and hold the pose as long as you can. So I'm going tuck knee indie right there with a little foot grab.
Half to stand, okay.
Yeah, no, you gotta hold the grab, Conrad. Let's go, man. Oh, is that a nose grab? Okay.
This is a game.
Okay,
Don't lose.
now, hold on.
Don't lose.
Now pick a second grab. Pick a second grab. All right. Any other grab that you like. Any other grab that you saw that you liked.
Easy one.
So and just simulate the best of your ability. Okay, now you ready? Now relax for a second. Now I want you guys to grab first grab and then switch to second grab as quick as you can. So grab and pose for a second. And now switch. And now wait, switch it back. And now switch it back. Switch it back. One last time, switch it back. Hold that last one, hold it, hold it. Okay, relax. Okay, everybody come sit down.
That was fun.
So you're the idea of fun, right? Through social engagement and activity and engagement is critical. And it's not so much that, I'm going to get my screen reset here. It's not so much that you have to force it, but you absolutely have to recognize what's happening in your group. There are moments in a lesson where you know you're losing your group. I had one, I think I told you guys this, I had one at Snoqualmie Pass in a clinic where I was losing my group because I was so focused on these cool things that I wanted them to do, but I didn't pay attention to whether or not they were really responding to it until it was a little too late. And I went too far down the road and let it get away from me. And I felt defeated. I went into that state of despair, and I actually had to humble up and go, I'm so sorry. I totally blew it. I'm out here working on hard fun with you guys, thinking that you're digging it. And I should have done some easy fun, gotten to know you. And then with some people fun and spent some time really in the easy fun, people fun mode to really start, spark that opportunity for a relationship so that we could get into some hard fun and you'd be more willing to go there with me. And I kind of blew it, right? And that's how I've started to relate these types of fun in terms of the lesson or a clinic is, are people too stressed out? Is it too challenging? Do I need to back it down so they can just have some fun? Go to easy fun? Do I need to ramp it up because they're getting bored? Do I need to push it? Do I need to push it to, a social thing? Are they checking out because the social environment isn't very functional? And at the end of the day, has this experience become a memory that's going to be lasting, something that's going to have impacted them and changed them for the long term? Okay, so on that, what kind of fun were we doing? Can you guys identify the fun we were just doing? Because I heard people laughing and giggling, and I saw Tony. Thank you. That was an awesome display in the background. Very good. What kind of
like
fun?
a people social fun.
So we were definitely in people social fun. Anything else?
Easy fun.
Easy fun, right? I didn't have to explain how to do a grab, right? I just told you to pick one and try to do it, and you guys did it. As awkward and weird as it was to do some body play. But for sure, it was in that easy fun focus. Okay, now we're going to take a step back, okay? And I want you guys to come up with a grab. Okay, we'll just stick with this grab theme, all right? But I want you to create an environment or a challenge within that has structure and rules. Okay. So if we were playing this together, right? And we had to have rules, don't leave your chair yet. And we have to have rules to make this hard fun, right? We're going to shift into hard fun. It's got to have structure. It's got to be a game with rules. Like Tony said, it go from just kicking the ball to kicking the ball into a goal. How could we take these grabs that we're doing and then turn it into a hard, fun type of game? Any ideas?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So a parameter could be, choose a grab with your front hand and then choose a grab with your back hand, or choose a grab that's straightforward and then choose a grab that has a shifty in it.
Absolutely. So now you're increasing the skill. So by increasing the difficulty of skill, you're pushing it into a place where people have to have more skill, makes it a little bit harder. What else? What are other thoughts? How else will we push it into hard fun?
Chris, I'd love for you to put your snowboard on and show me these grabs.
Actually, I think you wouldn't, because I don't have very good style. So just saying, so snowboarding for me is a lot like other things in life that are really fun to do and feel good, but you can still suck at them. And that's kind of where I live. But yes, if I put the snowboard on, absolutely, that would increase the difficulty level, right? Totally would. Okay, what else? How else would we push this into hard fun? What else could we do to gamify this, to make it a challenge, to change the way people relate to it?
You could give them scores with everybody here in the video holding up fingers out of 5, grading how good they did that grab.
Okay, perfect. So that's what we're gonna do. All right, I'm gonna pick 3 judges: Spicky, Mike, and Claire. You are the judges. All right, Conrad. Hold on a second. Conrad, Chandler, and Lynn and Cody are the competitors. Cody, are you willing to get involved? Okay, cool. So we're gonna go one at a time. Conrad, you're first. Judges, make sure you can watch Conrad's screen. Conrad, okay, do you know what grab you're gonna do, Conrad? Let us know.
Yeah, I'm gonna try a new grab.
Okay, so judges, I want you to score his grab based on overall impression only. So overall impression. Are you ready, Conrad?
Yeah, nose,
Execute.
tail.
Yeah, what the hell is he doing? I like it. Hold it and release. All right, let's give him a score, judges. What's the score? Say it out loud.
Is this 1 out of 10? Did you say that? I'm
1
sorry.
out of 10 overall impression.
An 8.
8. Mike.
I'm gonna go 6.
Spicky.
I'm gonna go 9. That was some good contortion.
Ooh, 9. Yeah, he looks like he might be sore from just what he just did.
He's going to feel that tomorrow.
Way to really commit there. I appreciate that. Okay, up next will be Chandler. Did I call Chandler out? All right, Chandler, let's see your best. All right, judges ready. Watching Chandler. Dude, looks like he's wrestling a bear to get out of bed. Oh, whoa, what do we have here? Okay, judges. Let's throw up our scores.
I give that a 3.5.
3.5. That's fair. That's reasonable. Don't be mad, Chandler. That's about a 3.5. Okay, Mike.
5.
Spicky.
I'm going to give it an 8 because it left a lot for the imagination.
Wow. Spicky, you're just like, you're so mature. You're so
We
mature.
got some Russian judges. We had some American judges. Like,
Yes, we do. Yeah. I mean, where would you guys say Spicky's from if you were judging based on country?
Canada.
More.
Okay, fair enough. All right, Cody, are you ready? Contestant number 4. Let's go, Cody. Let's see your best stuff. Yes, two-handed stiffy. What? I like it. Inverted two-handed stiffy. That's how people die, because afterwards the whole crowd beats them up. Anyways, judges, scores.
I give it a 9
9 from Claire.
for flexibility.
For flexibility. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, Mike.
I'll go with a 7.
7. Well, and that's a generous score for you, Mike. What inspired you to give him a 7 for that one?
The angle and usage of maybe both arms.
Fair enough. I like it. Spicky.
I'm going to split the difference and go with an 8 because I didn't see it. So,
Dude, your worst judge ever. Although that's not that abnormal for competitions for a judge just to throw a score up because they didn't see it. That's the wild card factor. All right. Or they don't know what the trick is. That's another one. Okay. Our final contestant, Lynn Hasday. Let's go. Oh, she's backing up. She's getting set.
All right, can you guys see?
Oh boy.
Oh,
she even has a board. She got props.
Whoa, yes. Okay, you guys ready? It looks like an air Rayleigh, but only because. All right, judges, scores. Claire.
9.5.
9.5. Yeah,
For
I would agree.
creativity, for sure.
Yeah, creativity. I like it. She brought in a prop. That's big points. Mike.
I'm gonna go with an 8.
8. Yep, I'm with it. Generous score from Mike. And Spicky.
Oh, you're muted, Spicky.
I got you.
shoot.
You're good.
All right. I'll go with an 8 as well.
An 8 from Spicky. For any particular reason, or are you not watching this time? Just out of curiosity.
For the flexibility, actually.
Okay, cool. So that little not watching thing, call back. Remember the 11 formulas of comedy, at least the one that I told you guys.
Right.
There it is, in use, in effect. Okay, so our winner of this competition by unanimous decision of the judges will be Lynn with her high-scoring, prop-driven, Air Rayleigh style method. Congratulations, Lynn.
Yes.
Well done. So really a simple example of, again, going back to engagement, right? Keeping the group engaged, trying to bring as many people in as I could while challenging you guys to figure out a way to turn, easy grabs into hard fun. Now, for someone who's never done a grab before, just doing a grab and trying to balance in some position like that would probably be hard fun for them. You might have to break it down and simplify and think of even easier things. We did a study once where we had groups of two lessons going. We had one group taught by someone who is a professional circus performer. He was a clown and also a snowboard instructor. And then we had a full cert snowboard instructor teach simultaneous lessons. And at the end, we surveyed them. Now with the clowns group, we asked them, we basically gave them a couple simple parameters. The clown had to teach juggling and could do that with as much snowboarding as they wanted in the beginner area. The level 3 certified instructor could teach a normal lesson, however they chose, whatever they wanted to teach. At the end, we surveyed the groups, and of the two groups, surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, but everyone in the clowns group had intent to return. Every single one said they would come back for another experience. In the high-end lesson, 8 out of 10 said they would return. Now, that's not enough data points to really conclude much, but it is an interesting data point to suggest that if you focus on easy fun and you keep the environment very engaging, you have a really strong opportunity of keeping people interested and excited and inspired about what you're doing. Now, if you go right into hard fun, which is oftentimes the mistake of especially newer instructors, you go right into hard fun, you tend to lose your students really early on in the process. So it's okay to clown it up a little bit. Right, Tony? Okay, thanks. Thanks for the thumbs up. All right. How are you guys doing so far? Everybody's doing okay?
Yeah, good. Hey, Chris, can I just ask a quick question on that last slide before we move on to this slide?
Yeah, of course.
You have, and I know this because I presented this as well, but I just want to make sure that you talk to this. Is like, because the slide always shows the 4 arrows kind of looking like, it looks like easy fun goes and then hard fun and then people fun and then
goes in one direction, right?
Yeah. But it doesn't need to necessarily be like that, right?
You know, I had this discussion with Hugh Reynolds when we had the illustrator come in and create this. And I'm like, yeah, but it can't just be arrows to the right. It's got to go in all directions because it's back and forth. But great point. Yeah, maybe it should be a circle or another one of these models. We got like 1 million models with like circles and lines and arrows and shit. And also they all have acronyms. Let's give it an acronym too. Let's call this AAS. This will be the AAS acronym, only because I know that you'll remember the fact that I used the word ass in my presentation more than if I told you it was EHPS or something like that, right? I think it's interesting that there is no linear progression to this, to Tony's point. There absolutely isn't. It naturally seems to begin at easy fun, but let's say you jumped into a hard fun experience and that's where you were at and you're going, you know what? I'm burning these guys out. I got to back it down. I got to back it down. Let's do some easy fun so their brains can settle down, their bodies take less of a beating, and we just go and relax and enjoy the fresh air for a second. I mean, sometimes easy fun is just making people stop and look at the environment they're in and appreciate where they are, you know, and that's a kind of fun that people tend to overlook a lot, I think, in the mountains. But to Tony's point, absolutely. It's constantly flowing and interchanging. You may jump from easy fun to people fun, you know, and through easy fun, you might achieve serious fun. You may absolutely achieve serious fun without hard fun or people fun. So now I will say this, Nicole Lazzaro sees it as a linear progression, but that's because, you know, she's working in a controlled environment, whereas we're working in a very dynamic environment, I think, that has a lot of different interactions that are unique. So great point, Tony. Thank you.
Yeah, Cody.
I think that even in like the video game, like kind of area that we kind of are talking about, like, or that she kind of uses this for, we see easy fun and hard fun and like even people fun kind of intertwine a little bit. Like,
yeah,
for example, loot boxes are like a huge part about video games, and that's a super easy fun skill. Like, it takes no skill whatsoever to just press a button and open a loot box and see the reward that you get.
Right.
But the hard fun is like kind of where you have to do first to get the reward itself, and the easy fun. And then the people skills or the people fun kind of intertwines with that hard fun of like playing like a certain amount of games that you have to do in order to earn that reward. So I think that even within like this whole video game area that she kind of, you know, came up with this idea, and we see those intertwined quite a bit.
I agree. I totally agree. And you just made me start thinking about it. It's funny that you said opening boxes. I've been playing a game with my kids called box openings. What is it called? It's like unboxing simulator. And it's just a game where you run around and click on a box and then you wait for it to open and you get a coin. I swear that's all it is. And my son and daughter are playing this thing like way too much. I'm going, wow, we could go outside and do something. They're like, nah, this is cool, man. Like, but to your point, yeah, the mixture of these things in a gaming environment absolutely exists. Absolutely. Well said. Anything else?
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead.
I got a quick question. So,
sure, hit me.
How are they re-engaging the folks that tell themselves or force themselves to disengage? So, i.e., you've been playing a game for 4 hours and you know you should go to bed, and you're like, you know what, this is it. I'm going to go to bed. How does that piece, how do you re-engage those folks?
That's an interesting question. I don't actually know anything scientific about how they re-engage them, but I will say that the lasting impact of a game that has achieved serious fun with a player, I'll give you an example. Because it carries on beyond playing the game. So my youngest son loves Fortnite, and I'll play Fortnite with him, and I'm getting a little better. I don't die as much, is all I can say. But after he's done playing the game on YouTube, there's like 1 million videos of people giving commentary as they play Fortnite. And so he'll watch these YouTube videos of people playing Fortnite so that he can get more information and more ideas. Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, KB, to your point, what it is like when somebody saves their where they are in the game, that means they're still engaged, even though they have to turn it off and go do something else. The fact that they have the idea like, hey, I want to make sure I save where I am in the game. Does that make sense? Because they want to come back because they're bought in.
Totally makes sense.
And I think in terms of snowboarding, if we want to, because I like to relate it there, snowboarding is my video game, and really it's coaching snowboarding and teaching it. But where I think you get that connection there is you go home, start looking at catalogs of the clothing and the gear, and you start thinking about your next trip and the next thing you're going to do. So there's a planning process, and there's a process that takes place that keeps you engaged. You're watching videos at home, how to, and that kind of thing. So, and one of the best benefits to having a great instructor or coach on your side is that they're right there with you. So you can reconnect. It's like they help you save where you left off in the game when you get back the next time to continue progressing. Great question. Okay, so I'll relate a little bit of flow theory here with you guys, and I won't bore you with it because it sounds like you probably had a presentation on flow theory. But Mihail Csikszentmihalyi, I'm getting better at saying it. I'm still probably wrong. But he's Hungarian, 30 plus years of studying the optimization of experiences, right? And the way I like to relate it very simply is, right, you've got the difficulty of the task there on one axis and the student's ability on the other axis. And the goal is to keep them constantly climbing in skill and excitement and enthusiasm without understimulating or overstimulating, right? And if they get too high in terms of the challenge, the difficulty of the task, there's a good chance that they could injure themselves. They're going to find fear, frustration, and failure. And those things will cause them to check out and plateau. If you don't challenge them enough, to Tony's point early on, like if you just give them the ball and you don't give them any direction for too long, then they'll get bored and they'll check out that way. And our goal generally as instructors, I think Conrad actually alluded to this earlier. He was talking about this a little bit, but I think where you want to live as a coach or instructor with your students and athletes is right on that close to the edge of frustration, but never quite getting there if you can avoid it, so that they have to be totally engaged and engrossed in the task of learning and experiencing rather than having any time to really get out of it. And part of that mission to keep them in flow is to back it down and tick it up. And maybe you guys can reflect on an experience, anybody in the group who might have an experience where you remember this naturally happening. You noticed your students getting bored, or you noticed them becoming over challenged, and you changed the game. You changed your approach accordingly. Anybody have a story, a thought? Oh, wow. Crickets. Thanks a lot, guys.
I'll chime in on this one. Actually, it was pretty hilarious. I had a couple of kids over at the barn, and they were making a obstacle course, and they just kept getting it harder and harder, and the falls were getting pretty crazy. Yeah. I did not stop it because I was laughing too much. I just wanted to go further and see how crazy they could get. So I went in the opposite direction. I encouraged the failures because I was laughing. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a good example. And in the barn, you got all that padding and everything going in your favor, right? So you can kind of go that way with the right group. However, proceed at your own risk. Anyone else?
Oh, I was gonna say I have a girl that I ride with pretty often throughout the season, and she's a dancer. She's like super talented, but definitely has like a mental block on a lot of things that involve fear. So we were working on 180s. We had the specific 2 spots where we were working on 180s, and she did her second 180 and I could tell she was tired. And I was like, all right, we're tired. She's like, that was so ugly. And I was like, it was kind of like sketchy, but let's go down, let's just ride, and we'll find little side hits and we'll just take it back a notch and we'll just practice straight airs. Like, that's it. And then the whole rest of the hill, like, we just practiced doing straight airs and being stupid and having fun versus like focusing on like this really hard task with multiple elements of timing and rotation and stuff like that. So she could kind of take it back and not be so focused and intense.
You're clearly a skilled coach. It's the smart thing, right? One of my favorite things to do with people who are terrified of jumps, for example, is not to necessarily focus on the side jumps or the jumps in the park. I like to go out and push them on starting on green terrain and then working my way up through difficulty of terrain on groomers where there are no speed police, so we can practice terminal velocity and getting used to going fast with movement, right? Going as fast as the hill will take us while moving freely, and then pushing that, pushing the movement at first, and then later on pushing the pitch of hill, the pitch of the slope, so that they continue to have to push themselves to have freedom of movement while they slide at high speed. And anytime you can back it down, because you can always make a simple thing really fun to do. And it can be really fun. I had a group of instructors and I made them do that switch, and they were having a blast just trying to figure out straight runs riding switch. And all of them naturally improved their switch riding just by learning how to overcome their fear of movement while cruising down the fall line riding switch. So the byproducts of backing it down are, sometimes exponential. That's a good point. Anyone else got one?
Yeah. So I've had a student that I've been riding with for a couple years now, and he was really good at like riding boxes and was like really good at being creative on boxes. And then just got to a point where he just kind of fell a couple times, and he started to get to that point where he just didn't want to do it anymore. So I started to be like, hey, let's start to get creative again, but I want you to do something that might not be riding the box on your snowboard, but do something just silly that you wouldn't normally do. So he decided to do an urban approach to the box itself and decided to sit down and do a butt slide the entire way. He called it a bench slide.
Yeah.
And then started to get him back into the mindset of, okay, like this is something that I can do. He went from being bored because we would go in the park and he would just only do just jump features to starting to get really engaged again and starting to get creative again. And then started doing stuff like a 50-50 to like a silly salmon off where he just flails in the air. And then that started to get him back into, actually enjoying what we were doing in the park besides just going through and not hitting any features until we got to the jump section.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I've had so many experiences like that. And it kind of reminds me of what Spicky was talking about in the first presentation, where he's talking about when they get to that red state and the stress hormones are released, they'll shut down. And that's a form. That's also frustration leads to boredom. Frustration leads to people checking out and quitting. And just by Cody, you taking the time to come up with, allowing him and coming up with a creative, simple way to play like that, takes it right back to where they need to be. Puts them in that mindset where they can learn again. It's awesome. Okay. Oh, I've got this video for you. I love this video. And after this video, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Tony's probably seen this video, so don't ruin it, Tony. But I'm just kidding. But go ahead. Let's watch this video. And it's the essence of what we do. It's the essence of creativity and trying to inspire people to do things that they're scared of, to do things that are boring, that suck, mundane. I love this video. Anyways, if you've seen it before, enjoy it. If not, I hope you like it. Let's try it again. So car companies, leave it to car companies to have the best advertising because they've got tons of money apparently, but and lots of free time. But I love that video because you just see the change in behavior from using the escalator to using the stairs. It's an obvious concept. My mind automatically goes back in time to the movie Big. You guys ever see the movie Big? One of my favorites. I have of playing chopsticks on that piano with some old guy at a toy store in New York, but it'll never happen. But simply put, like fun and creating the opportunity for it changes the way people think. It changes the way they motivate. It changes the way they behave on so many levels that, we oftentimes we talk about, let's keep it funny. I mean, it's safety, fun, and learning is a PSIA thing, right? And it's funny because safety should just exist and we should not even focus on it. But the fun is real because it really does change things. It takes our sport from being a scary, overwhelming, uncomfortable sport. In fact, when we surveyed people, we did a series of surveys, I'll share this with you, where we interviewed people in New York City and a couple other spots. And we asked them 3 questions. First, we asked them, have you ever skied or snowboarded before? If they said no to that, then we asked them, do you know anybody who has? If they said no to that question, we would ask them the third question, which is, what do you think your first day of skiing or snowboarding would be like? And they all described a beautiful, amazing, intermediate experience. Like they described blue skies, Norwegian sweaters. They all think that they're going to have an easy experience learning it. Then they're going to go to the top of the mountain with their family, where they're going to come down at the end and have an après and tell stories and regale each other in their glory. And it like an episode like a scene out of Jim Carrey's brain in Dumb and Dumber when he's lighting farts on fire. They all have this same kind of concept. And then you ask people, we would survey people afterwards, after their lesson, and the most common terms that came up were scary, cold, painful, and frustrating. And the 2 probably most critical differences that we experience, in terms of data, are when there's a strong connection with another person. So with the instructor, the coach, they make a massive difference. And I'd say probably the biggest difference. But that other factor, that other X factor that changes everything, that totally changes the game, because people who say they're going to come back also all say that they had fun. They all reflect on how much fun and how impactful the experience was from that perspective. And I think it's just a very telling thing to understand that while we may not be able to control it, right? We can't totally manage it, but we can certainly do our best to recognize it and create opportunities for it. And if we want to keep them in flow, then we've got to be having fun with them. If we don't look at every experience with our students, with ourselves, with our friends, our peers, our trainees, as a huge event, as an opportunity to create something special, as their day, it is the big day. It's the moment where everything is going to change for them. If we don't think of these things on that level, then we don't have that impact in their lives. And if we don't figure out how to turn boring or hard into fun and easy, then we aren't doing our job of creating a creative environment where our people can really thrive. We aren't managing that learning environment in a way that allows them to be the best version of themselves and have the best experience. Okay, on that, there's my wrap up. I really appreciate you guys staying engaged, and thank you for going along with me for the grab fun. That was a lot of fun. Normally it's ping pong balls, but we can't pass ping pong balls through Zoom. Anyways, do you guys have questions or comments or ideas that you'd like to ask or share?
I had a question. Okay. Maybe it's to the group if you guys have more experience with this, or Chris. My only question was, how could you start with serious fun?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me, and this is just the first thing that comes to mind, is you have someone who's already a passionate snowboarder, and they're in your lesson, right? They came because they're stoked. And then you've got the opportunity to make them more serious by going back through the different types of fun that might be available, right? That would be one example. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think another example of that would be like, hey, my mom and dad have done it for their whole life, and now I want to get into it. So I'm driven by them. I've never tried it, but they're like a lifetime snowboarder or whatever. So that makes me want to be that as well.
And if your question was also like, how would you as the coach create serious fun first? If that's the question, that's a unique question, right? How would you create serious fun first? You know, the way that Nicole describes these types of fun, she kind of talks about it as if you have to do the other things before you can get there. But it may well be possible. I mean, let's just argue that.
Well,
go ahead,
Chris. What I think about when you talk about like a hard or serious fun is like a professional football game, right? Like stepping on the field for the game is a hard, serious fun. Those guys are already so skilled and talented. That's the level that it needs to be at for it to be a hard fun.
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting. I think maybe on a simple level, if you brought something really cool to give to your students as a gift right away, or you give them insight. One thing Nicole keyed into when she took her lesson was in the way that when we were in the rental shop, I taught her how to wrap her laces in a unique way, just interlock them, right? And that was one of her favorite things of the whole day. And she told me, she's like, that made me feel more like I was a part of your culture than almost anything else that happened initially. So there's a thought for you.
Sweet, thanks.
Anybody else?
I thought it was awesome.
Thanks.
I really enjoy more of the fun stuff in teaching snowboarding than I do the serious stuff. So it's refreshing that there's like more of a serious element that you brought to the fun stuff.
Awesome.
Breaking it down and stuff. So
awesome. Thank you.
So the 4 types of fun were brought to Snowmass, I feel like during trainers training this year. And it was like something that we had talked about and gone over. Conrad, were you in trainers training?
Yes.
You were? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I enjoyed that you brought it to life. I feel like they kind of put up some slides and like we talked about it. But thank you for bringing it to life. So.
You're welcome. Sorry about that. I think you have some people at Aspen like Kevin Jordan and Jonathan Ballou who are a part of snow operating. So I know they've seen some of this stuff too. And this is, as Tony will tell you, I've been presenting on some of these topics for some time, and I live it. I live it, so to speak, throughout the year. And I get really inspired by this because it's simplified my approach. I'm a nerdy, cerebral guy. And, you know, I want to talk about the technical stuff and get into it and get lost in that. And it's so important for someone like me to remember how important it is for someone like my friend Seth Johns, how important it is for him just to be moving his body. Like I can't like make him sit still for very long. He wants to fight me. So it's like, I got to keep him moving and recognizing, just having a framework for me to recognize, you know, and then figuring out ways to show people how powerful it is. Yeah. Thank you, Corey.
Yeah, Chris, this is like it's awesome to see you give that presentation again. I've seen you give it a couple times, and I've given this presentation a couple times working with snow operating, and it's awesome. And every time I've given this presentation, like it's so cool to see the impact people have and like the little aha moments they have. They think back to their experiences when they're teaching and when they've connected those dots for people and when they've been able to actually see fun. Because you guys all know, right? We all know. We ask our students at the end of the day, hey, you know, what'd you think of that? How was it? And I was telling Mike, it's funny, like you go over to China and in a place like China, just the culture is kind of like, they'll always tell you like the right answer, right? So even though maybe they were confused or frustrated, maybe they didn't have a good time, they'll be like, yeah, so fun.
It's true.
Not have fun, dude. I saw you slam on your face so hard, bro. You didn't have fun. So don't, but it's funny. So it's funny when I'm giving these presentations to a room, like an auditorium of instructors, and you can see when this stuff connects, like it seems to have just connected a lot of those dots for you as well there, Claire. So that's awesome. It's cool.
It's pretty cool. It's stuff. Look, I mean, great advice. You already knew it, right? I think the best thing, here's what consultants do. They go in and tell people stuff they already know and charge them a lot of money for it. So it's like, my job is to make you feel way better about the stuff that you already know about, right? And to a certain extent, think about how empowering that is though. Think about how powerful belief is. Think about when you recognize something good in another person, and then you help show them just how good that is, how amazing that is, how special that is, they become a different person. They start to believe in themselves. And you know what? They know that they have someone else that sees them, that believes in them just for who they are and the way they are. And that is one of the most incredible things that we can do for our people, whether you're a trainer or just a frontline instructor, it doesn't matter. This is how we change lives. We don't get to cure cancer, to steal a line from Aspen Extreme, but we do get to make people feel better, a hell of a lot better about who they are and where they're going and what their future looks like. And I love that. I absolutely love that. Anything else from the group? You guys doing okay? All right.
Well, and with that, Chris, I see you there. And thank you very much. Thanks to Spicky. Thanks to Chris. You guys did a great job presenting. You gave me a really easy job tonight moderating, because you guys are great presenters and it's super easy. So awesome. Thanks everybody for being here. Next one's going to be on Thursday. Cody and Chandler, who are out of here, well, Cody's here, Chandler's who's not, are going to be presenting at 6 o'clock. Apparently Lynn's putting her fingers up, 6 o'clock on Thursday. So there's that. Again, Dayton is going to do a little meditation 15 minutes before. If you want to show up, that's cool. Yeah, so thanks very much. Does anybody have any final thoughts? Lynn, do you want to do any administrative?
Thanks, guys.
Cool.
Love that.
I have something that has nothing to do with snowboarding. On Tuesday, my roommate hosts a trivia night. So if you guys used to go out to the bar and go to trivia, I will put a link in the in Messenger, and you can go onto YouTube Live, and then you can link it to your phone and answer all the questions and stuff. It's pretty fun.
There are prizes.
What? Are there prizes?
Are there prizes? I mean,
Yeah.
trivia night usually has a gift certificate to the bar, right? Or free drinks, or a picture.
No prizes. You can step outside and breathe fresh air. That's
no worries. No worries.
Sweet.
Yeah, I'll put that in there if you guys are keen on that.
That'd be awesome.
All right. And with that, yeah, I guess if you guys are around, see you on Thursday. If not, it's all good. I think we've got some presenters for the next week as well. And yeah, we'll just keep this rolling, see how long it goes until it fizzles out and becomes nothing. So sweet.
Yeah, if anybody else wants to present, shoot me a message. Let me know. We'll get you in a slot.
Beauty. All right. Well, have a great night, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.